This segment of the podcast is sponsored by Traveling Nice Experiences, here to help you create new memories one experience at a time. Contact Traveling Nice Experiences at www.travelingniceexperiences.com to book your summer 2021 travel. Once again, that's www.travelingniceexperiences.com. We're ready to help you create your next memorable experience.
Previously on the What a Word podcast.
So as you put God first in your journey, as you recognize that, this journey has ups and downs. It's for you to learn, for you to grow. You can't grow without pain. Nothing grows without pain, right? So there's going to be some pain along the way, but it helps to shape your character. So for me, again, my goal is that through my journey, it can help to inspire others so that they can recognize the importance of their own journey, so that they can be the total them. I keep saying, be the total you. I think God has created every single one of us with a purpose that we are supposed to fulfill in this earth. And that purpose that we're supposed to fulfill does not compete with anyone else. And I think if people begin to understand that, then you won't compete with anyone. You'll be more inclined to help each other. I'm going to help you on your journey as you help me on mine, because there's a lane for each person to play in, because God created that space. So
you are listening to the What a Word podcast, an interview-style podcast where guests bring their unique experiences and insight on culture, life's challenges, and faith. Each episode is seasoned with words which will inspire and encourage. Now here is your host, Ryan Sharp.
Welcome to the What a Word podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Sharp. Good word from my guest from season 1, Crystal Ward. Please share your feedback. Reach out to me via WhatsApp, Instagram. Please let me know your thoughts on the recap, also known as the podcast dub plate. Crystal really served a great word, and I'm thankful, Crystal, for what you reminded us of. But I'm asking my listeners, if you've been blessed by the recaps, please drop me a line. Please share your feedback on your insight on those small snippets. It would really let me know that you are connecting and that you're encouraged by it. And I believe you'll be encouraged by my guest today, Pastor Dudley Francois. He has a ministry that has serious import, because as we discuss what's happening with many organizations, places of worship, we see that young people and young adults are having difficulty connecting. And my guest serves as the lead pastor for a church called My Generation. And he'll discuss more about that ministry, his own journey, his background, and you'll find out also why my guest is a Boston Celtic fan. He is currently the pastor of the My Generation Church, as I've indicated, and he is happily married to his wife, Gina, a registered nurse since 2011, and together they have 2 young children, son Pierce and daughter Jordan Taylor. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Pastor Dudley Francois, to the What a Word podcast. Yes, welcome, Pastor.
Hey, what's going on, Ryan? How you doing?
Good, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we started recording, I mentioned that you were on a short list of speakers for a reunion some young adults and I were putting together for a church many of us no longer attend, but we were thinking each year to have a reunion where we would gather. And the person we thought of was you, because you're doing impactful ministry. Pastor Dudley is the lead pastor of the Migen Church. And Pastor, I wanted to get into a little bit about what led you into ministry.
Oh, that's sort of a loaded question, because it implies that there's something in me that led me into ministry, and it really wasn't. To be truly honest, my entire life was running from ministry, to be honest with you. I felt the tug of going into ministry since I was, I don't know, maybe 16 years old. I have actually a pretty interesting story about that. I remember at a week of prayer at my home church, I remember Pastor Paul Graham came and did a week of prayer for us. And I remember on a Tuesday, I don't know why I remember it was a Tuesday, but on a Tuesday, I remember him preaching, and everybody was like saying amen and just really feeling his sermon. And I remember I wasn't necessarily affirming what he was saying as much as I was affirming how he was saying it. I was kind of mapping out how he strategically put together the sermon in my mind. I could almost like anticipate how he was breaking it down, what he was going to say next. And it was interesting that, like, at the end of the sermon, at the end of the service, like, I went to him and I said, "Hey, Pastor, great sermon. I was really blessed by it." And I asked him just randomly, I said, how did you know you're going to be a pastor? And he said, never forget this. He said, I felt like one day, is his words, I went to a pastor, and I told the pastor, "Hey, Pastor, great sermon. When I was listening to your sermon, I wasn't listening to what you were saying, but how you were saying it." And I was blown away, because that's exactly what happened with me. And so I instantly got fearful of that, because, growing up in the church, there's a stigma around, like, the pastor's life and how hard it is. And I just really didn't want to go do all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of ran into doing other ministry. Like, I was really, like, for people who know me in New York, growing up in New York, I was really invested in, like, youth ministries, Pathfinder. Every week I was in my Mastercard uniform. And I was kind of using that as a way for me to run from what God had really, really wanted me to do. And so, yeah, I've been running for my whole life until eventually, 2008 came through, the recession happened. At that point, I was working for a graphic design company, a web development company. They were making cuts. They cut me. I said, "I'm in New York. I'm going to find another job." Couldn't find another. And, like, there was, like, I don't want to say a guilt, because guilt has a certain connotation to it, but it was like a weight that was like, are you really gonna run? This is the opportunity? And when you feel like you can't sleep, like, that's the only thing on your mind, and you're not producing it, I'm all right, God, this is it. And so the rest is history. So I said, I'm gonna stop running from the call, and I went back to school, and that's what it is.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Just in line with what you said about seeing someone whose ministry you admired, when you started doing ministry, did people try to fit you into another mold? Did you find that as your early experience?
Well, I was blessed to have leaders who kind of allowed me to do me. I think they kind of trusted me in a lot of ways. And that's not really telling, especially growing up in our church. But I was really blessed with leaders that kind of trusted me to kind of do my own thing. And so I was kind of used to creating something out of nothing. Remember starting up a ministry with a friend of mine, Jennifer, at our home church, and called The Bible Unplugged. It was a Friday night afternoon program. And just creating something out of nothing, whether it was drama ministry, whether it was, debate, whether it was a musical. We literally put together a musical from scratch. So it just was what it was. So I never felt placed into a box. It gave me the freedom to kind of be very creative, very expressive. And so now ministry wasn't necessarily written in the context or in the confines of what the church felt was necessary. And so it allowed me to do ministry that I felt was necessary for the people. And so now it became more meaningful just because you can just do things that, scratches where it itches versus doing things that are just, productive. That's the reason why I can't, well, this is your podcast, I'm gonna let you lead it. But that's the reason why sometimes youth ministries frustrates me nowadays. Just its system and its program. I think it's just so structured, so tight that you can't be able to scratch where it itches. But that's another conversation for another day.
Wow. So I want to get into the call to go to MyGen. You'd obviously been doing ministry as a pastor at a local church for some time. I want to know what went through your mind when you were selected or appointed to lead MyGen. And just for our listeners, and I'll allow you to amplify it, MyGen, as I understand it anyway, and you can correct me, Pastor, is a church designed primarily with youth and young adults in mind. Mm-hmm. And many of these youth and young adults, from my vantage point, are battle tested. Many of them grew up in settings that are conservative. Many of them were introduced to church by parents. And then suddenly, there's a vision now for a ministry that has them in mind. And by no means are you the first pastor to lead that church, but you get a call at some point that says, Pastor Dudley, we're entrusting you with leading this very important ministry. What was going through your mind when you got the call?
At that point, I don't know if I was, if I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. But I knew I was ready for change. I knew I was ready to take on the mantle and to do something that I felt sort of walked within the niche that I felt was important. But MyGen is very, very unique, right? So the history of the My Generation Church, well, it's called My Generation Church now, but the history of MyGen Church as a church plant, and the founder of it, I guess his vision was more or less a young adult church in New York City that spoke to young adults, specifically the millennial generation, and catered to, what they felt was necessary. And it was great, but it also had challenges. Like any church plan has, especially when you don't have that many resources coming in, when you don't have a parent church. So there are blessings and curses because you don't have a parent church. You don't have anyone dictating what you're doing, but you also have difficulties because you don't have money coming in. And so people and money and all these different things that allow it to function. And so MyGen had a lot of its challenges before I got there. And I literally, when I got installed there, it was literally on the third floor of Northeastern Academy at the time, in the Port Washington area, or the Fort Washington, area of Manhattan. And it was on a hill far away. And when I got there, literally the church consisted of 7 people with fold-up chairs. Like that's all I had on the third floor of a school with 7 people and fold-up chairs. So that's the negative. But the positive is you have the ability to build your church your own way. There's no ideology that challenges you. There's nothing, there's no framework that's going to keep you. It's just you, your creativity, and God. Or maybe I should rearrange that order, but and see and do what you have to do. And so with that, when I approached MyGen, I kind of wanted to take a macro approach at it first. I kind of wanted to see exactly what was its intention based on the founder, and then see if it's working. What is this concept? And to see does it fit in where I feel like God is leading me to what church is? And it didn't. And so I changed a lot of it, but we can get to that in a second.
Let's do it, Doc. Let's do it. Let's talk about, what your vision was once you hit the ground running.
Well, the first thing I wanted to do is I felt that the problem that I felt with the church at the time was I felt like although it spoke a lot of words that were necessary for people to hear, like, oh, it's progressive, oh, it's for millennials, or whatever, yada, yada, yada. It just felt for me very gimmick based. There were a lot of programs, a lot of topics, a lot of things that they did that I felt like were just what do you call the clickbait things you do for young people to come out, but it wasn't things that I felt like were building the spirituality of my generation, no pun intended. And so I felt like we needed to kind of take a step back and begin to start to teach the church about what church is. If we have the chance to build up a church, let's build church the right way. And that's literally our slogan, building church the right way. What does church look like? Building church the right way. And so in that, our sermons are a lot different. Our study is a lot different. It's a lot more meaningful. It doesn't necessarily speak to the, oh, we're going to just talk about sex and relationships. Not necessarily saying that sex and relationship isn't a good topic, but, I feel like the Bible speaks and teaches more than what I feel is the things that we feel attract youth and young adults. I also had a problem with saying that a church like my gen only speaks to youth and young adults. I didn't like the stigma of feeling like the My Generation church was a church for young people, or a church for young adults. I believe a church is a church for everybody, and that its ideology should match how you see church and how you want to perform. Now, if it caters to a younger crowd, then I can understand that, because more younger people are probably more motivated to understand and see that premise, move toward that ideology and enjoy the church. But I never wanted to see it to be a young person's church, because young people are going to be older eventually. So what are you going to say when I get older now, when I'm 50 years old, that I have to leave the church because technically it's a young adult church? It doesn't make any sense. And so you should never cater a church based on a youth church, or it just doesn't make any sense, because time will happen. So it really should be on principles, and really should be on ideologies. And as we formed the team, and as more people began to start to buy in to the idea, mind you, I mean, me being from New York, I had to call in a lot of favors from a lot of people that I knew from beforehand, and a lot of people who just loved it, the concept, and trusted me based on ministry that they'd seen me do in the past, and they just jumped on board, and they just loved it. And then from there, we kind of rebranded the church from My Gen Church, which in itself I felt was a little bit of a gimmick. Like, literally, My Gen, the term My Gen is it's a nickname. You can't call a church by its nickname. And so I rebranded it and say, no, it's the My Generation Church. And so it's a church for anyone can claim it's my generation. It speaks to every generation because it speaks to the principle. And so even though I have no problem, we all call it My Gen, but I wanted to make sure that its brand and its symbol was a lot different. And so we changed the logo, we redefined the name, the concept, the mission statement, and the entire field. And then by the grace of God, as we began to grow in the school and people just started coming, and we started doing well, eventually moved. We actually felt the need to get our own place. And so the church came to a real fork in the road, a real decision-making question of what type of church do we want to be? Do we want to be a congregational church? Do we want to be a church that people come and drive to? Or do we want to be a missional church? Do we want to be a church that serves the community? And obviously we chose the latter. And so with that, we weren't just picking a location for the sake of picking a location. We wanted to pick a community that we felt, one, did not have the Adventist message, did not have that type of message saturated in this community, as well as a community that we felt was necessary for us to, plant roots towards. And so prayerfully, we came up with Harlem amongst the Adventist, churches in New York City. Harlem doesn't really have that much representation of churches. We have Ephesus, and we have a City Tab. We have some of the Haitian churches, Morijah and Bethel, and I believe that's it. I know there's New Hope, also SDA, but I'm not too sure of their status. But it wasn't as much as saturated as like the Bronx or Brooklyn or Queens, Long Island. It just wasn't. And so we said, okay, since we're already in Manhattan, let's just stay in Manhattan and just and focus on Harlem. And so we found a space there, and it's still right now. It is a storefront. It's all we can afford. Planted ourselves there, and Ryan, I'm telling you right now, I mean, right before COVID, I mean, we were standing room only, and it wasn't sermons every week. It was more discussions. Our sanctuary isn't necessarily pews, it's couches, and it seems more like a lounge. Pardon the connotation. From some people, they hear lounge and they instantly think sin, but no, it's just a very comfortable area where people are able to sit, converse, worship, dialogue, and not feel the pressure of leaving when the benediction happens. And from there we just took off, and we're really excited about that premise, and just kind of making sure again that we're trying to do church the right way by holding down to principles.
That's awesome, man. Now, Pastor, did it surprise you? You said when you initially saw the plan, 7 members. How surprising was it to you that folks were gravitating towards the ministry?
From the 7 members to where we are now? Wow. So, I found I was very humbled. Me leading My Generation Church today is a very humbling experience. It's really redefined my view towards church, God, myself. It's humbled me in a lot of ways, because trying to build something out of nothing, man, keeps you constantly on your knees. Why do I feel it grew? I really feel like it's because the team that we initially had, from the 7 that grew to about 20, that first initial group of people that decided to want to come for the right reasons, really had a desire to, because they had an experience of what church was, and they were either burnt from their old church experience, or just needed something that was a little bit more meaningful. Everyone had a Christian experience that gave them a context to see church in a way that can affect them on a Tuesday and not just a Saturday. And I really got to give a lot of credit to the team, to a bunch of young adults who were just captivated and kind of ran with it. And I try my best not to necessarily be a micromanager, but to support people and give people the ability to just allow them to understand the principle of the Bible, so that we're not going too crazy and loose. But once we were fortified with the principles, things just went. Things just grew in a way that we couldn't expect. And so I'm not really too surprised by it, but I'm humbled by it. I'm humbled by that initial group and what they were able to see. Because I'll tell you, Ryan, like, you have to have some level of genuine desire to see something become something when you are going to that church. When we were at the school, literally no trains go there. Like, you have to get the A train, and from the A train, last stop, you're walking another 7, 8, 9 blocks. And then from there, you're literally climbing a 100-foot stairwell just to get to the school. And then from the school, there's no elevator, or at least the elevator is not working. So you have to climb another 3 flights of stairs just to get to the church. When you get there, you're the people that's setting up. It's not like you have the deacons and the deaconesses already working there for you. The same people that are doing the program is the same people that are tearing down and building up, and that same process over and over again. So it must mean that your heart must be in the right place. You're not coming for the show. Because if you're coming for the show, the glitz, the glamour, and all these different stuff, there are whole bunch of other churches you could have went to. And so I credit where my gen is now from those core people, because those core people was there when it was hard, when it was really difficult. And for that, I'm really humbled. I see ministry a lot differently because of that. It's changed the way in which I see church.
Good points. What does it say about the larger church that from your core group, the talent that you saw, the urgency, the investment, the maturity, what does it say about our larger church that some of these core members had to find somewhere else to serve?
That's a good question. And so, you know, somebody can hear that question and already feel that it might be loaded. Oh, well, you know, bigger churches, they don't give enough, you know, opportunity for other people. And so other people have to find their own way. And so, yeah, you could say that. But so that's a question that's been given to me about my gen and its success and its growth over the, you know, 2+ years that I've been there so far. I can't believe it's been that long. COVID has really messed me up on the timeline. But a lot of people ask me the question about, hey, Pastor, you know, this thing is growing pretty fast. You know, how big do you want this thing to be? And I said, to be honest with you, you know, if we're trying to do church the right way, I don't think, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, dispel or poo-poo our bigger churches. Our bigger churches have held down ministry money-wise and ministry-wise in a lot of different ways. But I don't know how a church can be that large and succeed in the ways it's supposed to succeed. Now, you can succeed, you know, externally, but internally, it's hard for a person to find an opportunity for them to serve in a bigger church. What I found with my gen, I said, to be honest with you, once my gen gets 200 members, we're planning another church. Like, my vision is, hopefully we have my gen Harlem, my gen Queens, my gen. That's my greater goal. Hopefully, by God's grace, that we're able to establish Harlem and allow Harlem to be that hub, and then plant my generation church Queens, my generation church wherever it is, and begin to start to build that way. Because I don't necessarily believe, because you need people that have room for them to work and serve. You have to allow their faith to work and serve. If there's no area for a person to serve, if they're just coming just to be a spectator, it's hard for you to allow Christians to be who I believe God has called for them to be. And so I don't ever think that a church gets too large, because I just feel like it doesn't give for the growth that I feel it needs.
One of the things I learned from our annual reunion, our local church did one, and we were set to do another before COVID, is that young adults, the earning capacity is out of this world.
Yeah.
I think I took it for granted that my peers had such earning power, and not only earning power, their vision and creativity was out of this world. I don't know if we've tapped into that potential. I think what I've found anyway is that a lot of youth and young adults are more or less disengaged from regular church life as we know it. It doesn't say anything about their private devotional life, etc., but they're not doing regular church the regular way.
Right.
Has my gen had to deal with criticism because of the outside of the box type of ministry that you do?
Of course. If hate is getting hate, you know, I don't know. You know, but who cares? Like, so yeah, so there's definitely some naysayers, but unfortunately they can't, at least under my ministry, they can't necessarily pick at the things that we're doing, especially because I've tried my best to eliminate the gimmicks. And so now, to be honest with you, I mean, I can say this confidently about our church. I can't necessarily say about any other church, but for my church, we preach a lot of Bible. I mean, you come to my generation church, we did a 4-month series on Saturdays and Tuesdays of the entire Daniel and Revelation. I mean, verse by verse. If you're looking for like Bible content, we're not doing any fluff here. I'm in the middle right now, like right before we started recording this. I'm in the middle of preparing our Genesis series and getting in through the context of that. And so it's hard for people to nitpick exactly what we're doing as much as they might nitpick the fact of, oh, well, baptize your own people, don't steal our people. I think that's the thing that I'm hearing so far, that a lot of young people are leaving our church to come to your church, and that doesn't necessarily give you the credit because we're the one that baptized them and you didn't baptize them. Okay, I guess. I'm not necessarily forcing anyone though to come. I think a lot of people who come, they come based on their own convictions. We do baptize people. We baptized people before, so I think that's just there's a concept of the fear that they have of losing what they felt like they invested, even though investment means a lot more than just baptism and but it is what it is. And so now they are realizing, I think a lot of churches are realizing the lack of inclusion they had towards a particular generation, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. And before it might not necessarily have been a threat because there was not an option for people to leave to go to, now there is. The My Generation Church represents an I don't want to come across as adversarial or competitive, because we're all really under the same goal here. But I think a lot of people look at us to be a competition, and they see us to be a threat. I don't even know why that language should even be there if we're all working for the same goal, but they do see it that way, and because of that, you'll always find the naysayers. But it is what it is. It's not necessarily, it should never be towards an idea of members and who has the most or the least. It should be, how many people are being saved? Where are people's hearts and convictions? Are people being prepared for the second coming of Jesus Christ? If that is the goal, if that's what we're supposed to be preaching, that, right? If that is the end goal, it shouldn't matter to you where anybody goes, if they're being blessed, if their hearts are being changed, and so on. But not the world we live in, unfortunately.
Are you enjoying the What a Word podcast and want to learn how to share it with others on social media? It's easy. Go on your favorite podcast app, find the What a Word podcast, and hit share. Please remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you won't miss any episodes. And if this podcast has encouraged or inspired you, then please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps new listeners find us easier. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed too, it's a constant conversation for guys I grew up with. Many of us are from the Caribbean, but most of us have spent more time here in the States than our place of birth.
Right.
And there was a certain tension in the way we were socialized and our youth and young adult experience. So you're in a culture where people don't relate the way you were used to relating back home. And you're changing as well because you're becoming an adult, a man-child in the promised land, so to speak. And what we found, the tension we found, was the relatability factor with most of the pastors who shepherded us. And they were good guys. I mean, personable, love Jesus, love saving souls. but we never felt our average pastor had a top 10 favorite rapper list. There was a disconnect in terms of our culture and what we had grown up around, right? So, in terms of urban ministry, you mentioned the church plant. Do you sincerely believe a MyGen is needed in every city and in every county in New York State? A MyGen plant?
Ooh, well, it may not necessarily be a MyGen plant, but I do believe that church planting for the sake of targeting a purpose is necessary, because I find that, okay, so you can, for lack of a better term, attack the apathy of ministry in two different ways. You can either continue to keep pushing the same agendas that we've been doing till kingdom come, or you can completely shatter the mold. There is no in between, in my opinion. In my opinion, there's no in between. And so for me, I find that you have two narratives. That's either support your church, stay in your church, young people stay in your church, you are the church, yada, yada, yada. And then there are some people who are called, some young adults who are called to continue to hold up the banner in their local church. And God bless you. But I do feel that for a lot of young people, there isn't enough room for them to do so. And so I feel like for the success of ministry, period, there needs to be church planting. Now it might look like MyGen. It may not look like MyGen. It might be urban focus, as MyGen is. It may not necessarily be, to each his own. I don't necessarily feel that, you need a MyGen upstate. You may not necessarily get the urban responses you're looking for. But I do believe that in every city, major city, there needs to be, an idea and a concept of a church that speaks to the relevance of the culture and the tone of the city. Let me tell you why, Ron. Because so you were talking about growing up in the Caribbean, but pretty much being here for more of your time. So my problem, or what I found when it comes to churches, because me growing up in a Caribbean church as well, in a Haitian church as well, I found that and I'm not, disparaging, immigrants. My parents are immigrants, but we have to accept the ideology that is given there, because if you have the mentality coming from wherever you're coming from, wherever you call home, to America, you're coming with the idea of this place that I'm coming to, I want to succeed by all costs. I'm going to work hard, and if I don't get the success, at least the next generation, my kids, are going to benefit from the hard work, because I'm doing this for the sake of making my family and better. And that's great. And so you do everything in this country not for the effort of making the country better, but you're doing it just to reap the rewards from what the country has to offer. Because for me, when I was growing up, and when Thanksgiving came around and my aunts and uncles came by and they were talking, everything they were talking about was back home. President back home. This is what's going on back home. And I always be like, well, if home is Haiti, then what do you call this? And so if you already have the mentality that the place in which I live is not my home, if that's already your mentality when you look at your normal life, then how do you apply that to spiritually? How do you apply that to your ministry? And so you can't deny the fact that that's also attributed to the way in which you looked at church. And so for many Caribbean-based churches that have come to the States, they've come with the mentality of, let's just infiltrate, set up our own space so we can do our own thing, reap the rewards, and leave. And so there are many churches that build up their church. They bought whatever property they can afford no matter what community it was in, didn't even care about the community that they were in. They were just buying up the place that they can find, set up their little church and worship. They come in on Saturday and migrate in, worship, and they leave. And the community that didn't even know they existed, unless you have enough resources where you're able to do any positive change or anything like that. Majority of our churches just worship and then they leave. And so that's the problem. And so in order for us to change that, we need churches that are planted for the intention of the community. There needs to, not necessarily look like my gen, but there needs to be a mindfulness of what's the culture, what's the framework, that's the cause, the reason of this community. What does this community need? If we're going to build a church, let's build a church for the sake of the people that live in the community. And I find that for my gen, coming to Harlem was the best thing for us because it's really centered us around, what we're going to be, who we are, and then ultimately the rewards that we're reaping because of it.
Awesome, man. And I see the elements are there. Good worship, good praise and worship, fellowship, good preaching, authentic ministry. In fact, it seems the church is able to get to the issues that affect the members. You guys have talks, seminars on anxiety, depression, forgiveness, purity, sexual challenges, etc. Getting right to the heart of
people.
Toxic
Yeah,
people.
yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
I mean, it would seem to me that you're able to get to what the triggers are of individuals because you've kind of removed the non-issues for members. And
right.
People may not understand that for most churches, even the way one worships could be a subject of debate and warfare. So,
yeah.
So it's tremendous, man, and I'm happy to see that. Doc, I wanted to know your course of study, Washington Adventist University, bachelor's in theology, concentration in pastoral ministry, an interest, strong interest in media ministry, graphic design. How did the two come together in terms of ministry for you?
Well, I've always done graphic design. Really all my life, I was always a graphic designer, making flyers and stuff like that. I felt like that was really my niche. That's why I felt like I was going to be growing up. So for me, it kind of came together. Well, COVID was great for us, but it really came together, the concept of media ministry, and it really came together, especially because I realized the importance of branding. Branding is extremely important. I don't know if a lot of churches recognize that brand, not necessarily visual branding, but branding on a whole in regards to your marketing, your messaging, and all of those things is extremely important. And so for me, working as a web developer initially has really given me a lot of learning about how that works for businesses. And so then when I was able now to become a pastor, I said, hold on, I'm not just going to do things for the sake of doing things. I'm not just going to do things because the manual tells me to do it. I'm going to do things based on what the brand is, not even the mission statement, which I feel like a lot of people just say it, but they don't really apply it. What's the brand? What's the feel do I want people to get when they experience the My Generation Church? And from that, it made media ministry a lot easier. It made it a lot more intentional. It caused for there to be a certain look and a certain feel, and from that, the rest became easy. I work with a great designer as well. God has given us an amazing graphic designer. Ironically, same name as you, Ryan, at our church, who does fantastic work with graphics. And then between him and myself, Not to have one graphic designer, but two graphic designers in the church. One that, really does well with stills and images. Myself, I do well with that, but I'm also very good in video editing and, creating opens and all these different other flares. And so because of that, it made a lot of things a lot more easier and a lot more intentional. And so when we're able to go into COVID times and when we were able to go online, it was a lot easier for us to transition, simply because, not just because we had the knowledge, but we knew what we were trying to get across, what the feel was, what the brand was. So there are many people who have a lot of music, they have a lot of graphics as well, but it may not necessarily come across the way they would want it to come across because they don't know what they're branding. Branding is extremely important with media ministry. You don't know your brand. Media is just an outlet. It's just a way for you to communicate what you're trying to get across. So if you don't know what you're trying to get across, doesn't matter how many colors you have and how many transitions you give. Gotta get the message across.
Some points. I want to take you back a little bit, Pastor. Your church was growing at a good pace before COVID. Many of us have theorized what may have been happening emotionally, mentally, and spiritually and otherwise for youth and young adults. But being a pastor of a church primarily composed of that group, what were you seeing from your members in terms of the response, not only to the health pandemic, but also to the racial pandemic, which was heightened during that time as well?
I'd like to say that when there's a will, there's a way. I really feel like the My Generation Church, the people that we have, man, you can put them in Alaska and they'll find a way to do something meaningful, just the type of people they are. And so credit to God and credit to them for just being great. COVID, we thrived in COVID. I'm not gonna lie to you. We thrived. Our church grew during COVID. We have a lot of online members we have not met. I mean, there are members I have not physically seen yet that have joined the My Generation Church since COVID has started. I say to God be the glory for that. I really feel like it, not just the fact that especially for the youth and young adult age range, because any and every online experience wasn't necessarily catered to them. It was easier to get a bigger audience, even more so than asking everybody to drive to Harlem and find parking in Harlem. We were standing room only, don't get me wrong, but now we kind of opened ourselves more up to New York City, opened ourselves more up to the world in a lot of ways. And so with that, just making sure that we continue to remain centered on what our goal was. Because Ron, I'm telling you, I think a lot of our success in COVID, and the reason why there are a lot of people who came to us, they came to us because it's important for a church to recognize that it is a hospital, but that not every hospital is called to be a general hospital. Like, you with me? Like, there are the problem that I find with sometimes with churches, and the reason why I feel like MyGen has done well is because MyGen didn't try to bite off more than it could chew. And I'm gonna get to the social justice thing in a second, but what I felt like what was good for us was we said, you know what, instead of trying to be a general hospital and meeting the needs of every single person and what they needed to cover, let's just be specialists at one thing. Let's just be great at one thing instead of trying to do 12 things. Because when you do 12 things to try to cover 12 things, you're going to spread your resources, you're going to spread yourself out too thin, and you won't be able to make yourself meaningful. And the reality is too, especially if we're trying to be a church that meets Harlem, that's supposed to help Harlem, the reality is, you know how many non-Adventist churches already have Harlem locked down? I mean, Harlem in itself and the Black community and what Harlem means to the history and the story of the Black struggle, you
Sure.
think that churches already have its staple. And so I'm not going to dare try to challenge our place and compete with FCBC, or to compete with our Baptist churches and our Pentecostal churches that have been doing their thing. And so the best thing I think for us was to just keep in our niche and be great in what we do. And so with that, our main focus was, all we're going to do is community relations. Like, we're not going to do anything else. We're not going to do health ministries. We're not going to do men's ministry. We're not going to do anything. All of our resources is going to be towards serving people. That's all we're going to do. That's all our money is going to reach to that. That music is all our budget is really centered towards that. And so because that was already our focus before COVID, and we did not try to change who we were because, okay, now more people are watching us, so let's try to see if we can do more. No, let's not try to act like something that we're not. We're still a church plant. We still got, less than 70 members. Let's chill here for a second and not, think of ourselves too big. And so we just stay to our niche. And when you continue to stay to your niche, ironically, our niche also fed to a need. And so now it was easier for us to do a liberation rally after the death of the murder of George Floyd. It was easier for us to relate to our contacts at National Action Network and to liaison with the different community activists and workers. It was easier because we already had that network in before. And so all it was just continuing to hammer down to that particular niche and allow it to grow. And so with COVID and during the time and during the social unrest, we just felt the need to make sure that our voice is heard, and to not try to do more than what the Lord has called for us to do. That God has given everyone a certain ability. And so just playing your role and see what the Lord is able to do, how the Lord is able to give you increase, and just worked out pretty well for us.
Awesome, man. Awesome stuff. So, Pastor, I have to ask you, you obviously have the spirit of Christ, but I'm wondering if that's what led you to become a Boston Celtic fan. Finding, I mean,
Boston. Oh man, we've been playing good recently, but this season, good gracious, oh my Lord. So everyone's asking, a lot of people ask that question. Yo, Dud, you grew up in New York. How in the world? Well, first off, the same thing like my gen. When you find another option, I mean, look at what New York had to offer. I mean, so let's start there. So it's not like anybody can say, "Oh, well, why aren't you a Knicks fan?" I mean, it's obvious. And I'm a type of person. I'm a practical person. I'm a person that believes there's no way you're going to pay your money and you're investing your time, your talent, and especially your treasures on something that isn't giving you anything to reap from that. And so I became a Celtics fan, ironically, in 2002.
So you're the Rage on Rondo, Pierce, Garnett.
Oh no, way before that. Yeah, I'm Paul Pierce, Ricky Davis, Antoine Walker,
Big Baby Davis. Yeah. Okay.
No, not Big Baby Davis. I'm talking. See, that's even before. I'm not talking about Big Baby Davis. I'm talking about Antoine Walker, Ricky Davis. Not Ricky Davis was a player back in the day. That Celtics that when we went to the Eastern Conference Finals and we played the New Jersey Nets with Jason Kidd. Yeah, I'm back then. I was a Celtics fan in high school. I loved that run. And we eventually lost in the Eastern Conference Finals, and New Jersey went to go play the Lakers in that finals. And they lost. Kobe. That was Kobe, I think, second ring or third ring. I think it was third. Anyway, so that I became a Celtics fan from there because I just loved Paul Pierce's response. I believe it was in the second round with Indiana. And Paul was like going at Harrison from Indiana and just drained the three right in his face. And from there, I was like, yo, this dude is crazy. And so, I was a Celtics fan from there. And then we were doing pretty good. Don't get me wrong. Celtics were good. We weren't contenders. We were never contenders. but we were doing pretty good in the early 2000s, and then by the mid 2000s, by 2005, 2006, we were terrible. It was horrible to watch us. And then all of a sudden, Danny Ainge pulled something out of nothing, took that pick, traded that pick, got Ray Allen, and then from there, Kevin Garnett, rest is history.
Wow.
It's not like I don't like the Knicks. I feel like I don't like Knicks fans because I feel like Knicks fans are like Cowboy fans. They're like, the second they smell a little bit of success, they start, go New York, go New York, and then everybody starts going crazy. I'm like, guys, it's like you guys have just made it over 500 and y'all acting like y'all like champions. So like,
so I shouldn't throw the word dynasty yet.
Yeah, I would say let's get out the first round. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. Let's get out the first round, and it is what it is. But I'll tell you this much: Tom Thibodeau, coaching was really important for you guys this year. Coaching was really important for the Knicks this year. Really, 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 really important. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Is what it is.
Awesome, Doc. Man, thank you so much, Doc. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the importance of family, married to wife Gina, going on 9+ years.
No, 9+ years. We're about to hit 8. Yes, I think yes. Okay.
I think I saw a 9 in the bio. Said,
oh, really?
You're right. I'm hoping you're right.
Something like that. Well, it's not 10 yet. It's not 10 yet. It's close. I don't know. So don't hold me to it. Right. She's gonna kill me if she is.
And a son, Pierce. Pierce named after Paul Pierce.
Well, the jury's out. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Yeah, there's a story behind that. I don't know if we have enough time for that, but yeah, well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. So my family is great. I found myself, especially with being a pastor, man, this thing has giving you a lot of pressure, man. So, I'm just trying to stay grounded, do what you got to do, man. Come home, they've been really great. I mean, we're homebodies. We don't really do much. I'm not really as much as you might, hear me like, hey, Pastor Dudley is a cool guy. And, I think I'm pretty dope. I must say, but yeah, I'm an in-home person. And so, my family is everything, Gina's the person I joke with, my kids, people that I play with, and it is what it is. So yeah, I love them. Great. My son Pierce, my daughter, the boss, Jordan, she is the boss. Yeah, they are my world.
So Pastor, I'll close with this. We are challenged with the fact that our church is comprised primarily of women, and young adult women in particular have challenges finding, I'll just put it in quotes, good Christian men.
Yeah.
And men who are alpha males aren't particularly attracted to church and church life.
Yeah.
What is your hopefulness where this is concerned? The numbers are sobering for our sisters, and many of the brothers who could offer so much to service and ministry and have impact have no real interest in being connected to any church. Where do you find hopefulness where these issues are concerned? And I'm sorry to drop this as almost a final question on you, but it's one of import, and
I agree. I agree. I feel like that is a reality that is sobering. I know that is something that is really affecting a lot of our sisters, our queens. But I always like to, and I don't know if I have the answer for everything, but I always like to try to keep things in perspective and to say, well, according to the Bible, relationships and, the union of two people are in accordance to thus saith the Lord. Like God brought Adam and Eve together. And so in everything, in all things, it works together for good to them who love the Lord. All things, whether good or bad, whether things there is union or there isn't union, all things work together for good to them who love the Lord and go according to his purpose. And so I feel the problem has really become not necessarily that there isn't enough men for our women, for lack of, just to summarize it, but I feel like as if the message of, someone being married needs to somehow be changed. Our church has really taught a lot of our women that you know, can't find success or happiness if you aren't married. And so because of that external pressure, and because the social parameters has given us a feeling that you need companionship, that I feel like there's a lot of women who recognize that. If we are able to teach a message of recognizing, of saying that, marriage is for the fact that someone needs a helpmeet. And if the Lord has not given you a helpmeet, it's because the Lord has decided for you don't necessarily need help. I find myself married doesn't necessarily just give me companionship as much as it gives me an ability for me to see myself. And so you got to embrace the fact that, if the Lord has not called you to find someone, it's because the Lord has called you to be a person like the singleness of Adam in the Garden of Eden, just to manage and maintain, just to you watch and keep the Garden of Eden, and be content in you and your relationship with God. Adam in his singleness had no quarrel with him being single. He didn't even know he was single until God himself made him aware that he was single. So embrace your single. There's nothing wrong with being single. You know what I'm saying? And we need to begin to start allow that message to be prominent. And so to change the mentality of making our ladies, and some of our men for that matter, feel as if they are someone, or they're identified because they are with someone. To change that mentality and to trust in the Lord in all things, to put things in his hand, and know that if I'm a person that I'm a believer in what God is doing, then I have to trust that whatever God is doing or isn't doing is for my good, and it's setting me up to be the best version of myself for the sake of what he has prepared for me in the future.
And the alpha males, Doc.
Yeah. So that comes with, again, a specific ministry. Like for men, there needs to be a tangible ministry for the men of our generation. There hasn't been enough transparency from the generation before us that taught us how to be comfortable being vulnerable as men. And so because of the lack of transparency, there has been a need to want to emulate a standard of being a man rather than embracing, what a man is in who you are. And so now people are, a lot of men are just chasing the money because there's a standard of manhood that means you need to be, grounded in, your finances or whatever the case may be for you to be considered a man. Or, you need to have a lot of girls or whatever it is. And so because of all those stigmas, there just isn't enough role models. The same way with the social justice movement, in my personal opinion, is the reason why everybody's running around with their chickens, chickens with their head cut off, because there isn't enough leaders. With men, there needs to be some more leaders. I really feel like, and I respect the ministry of like Dr. Myron Edmonds. I even appreciate what's my brother's name from Ephesus, Brother Graham, the brother of Paul and Patrick Graham.
Gary,
yeah, Gary's really big on men's ministry. Just some guys who just been really pioneers in about that cause and pushing that cause. We need more of that. We need more people who are able to do that, because that I feel is the only thing that's really lacking. And I don't know about saving that generation as much as it is, looking to the next generation and being that example for that next generation and seeing what damage we can repair as we move forward in time.
And I want our brothers to know, man, and I appreciate what you said in terms of the sisters not feeling all is lost. I know it's not an easy teaching. It's not easy because everyone wants companionship. And
Yeah.
it breaks my heart because I know that a lot of these sisters could help and be good companionship,
Yeah. Yeah.
But to my brothers who may be listening, man, there is something that you can do and it will have impact. I am praying that if you're out there just wondering why you can't fit in with the church, just know, man, that there is something for you. And hopefully, you can connect with churches like the My Generation Church.
Yeah.
Pastor Dudley will tell you he has a need for men, or
Yeah. For
men who
real.
are called to principle and want to serve, man. I mean,
For real.
it's sobering, but I'm hoping that we will find ways to connect to service and have impact in our communities as well.
Yeah, man.
Pastor Dudley Francois is the pastor of the My Generation Church under the Greater New York Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. He's happily married to his wife Gina, a registered nurse since 2011. Together, they have two young children, son Pierce and daughter Jordan Taylor. Pastor, thank you so much for joining me on the Water Word podcast. You gave us a lot of nuggets. Please, finally, tell our listeners how to connect with the ministry, etc. Give all your handles.
Okay, so bad. So first of all, Ryan, thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this platform and what you're doing. I just had an opportunity to constantly keep listening to your podcast and what you're doing. I feel like it is a word that is needed, and just
Thank you.
how well rounded it is. I don't know. Eventually, you have to tell me your story about how you started this.
Sure.
Yeah, but this is good. I mean, for us, for the My Generation Church, you can just come and visit us on our website, www.mygen.church is our website. Forget all of your information. We are located currently in Harlem on Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, between 136th and 137 Street. In Manhattan. And so whenever COVID is over, you can find us there. You can follow us on Instagram at mygen.church, and also on Facebook. Just search for My Generation Church. Myself, you can follow me on Instagram at Pastor Dudley with 2 D's in the middle. Also on Twitter, Pastor Dudley with 2 D's in the middle on Twitter. And that's pretty much it. Well, am I missing anything? No, I think I'm good.
You gave the YouTube channel, Doc?
Oh yeah. So we definitely have our YouTube channel with all of our videos on different series that we've covered, whether it was the Daniel Revelation series that we called the Promised Kingdom. We have Asking for a Friend series where we have discussed all different questions about church and faith and life, from why do we believe in spirit of prophecy to conversations on jewelry and the church, and topics on fasting and prayer and what's the necessity of it. From men, why are men leaving the church? What's going on with women in the church? And the same conversation that we had from certain series like dealing with, when we talked about anxiety and unforgiveness and other topics. So check us out on our YouTube page. You can just search for My Generation Church on YouTube, and you will find us. Give us a quick subscribe and support us as best you can. We're actually trying to purchase our own building. We're leasing this storefront right now. The lease is going to end by the end of 2022, and so we're hoping that through some fundraising, we're able to secure our own place in Harlem, and that's going to be so hard. But it was hard to get this place that we're in now, so I'm just going to trust in God. But it's going to be so hard to find a property in Harlem. You can find a property in Brooklyn and the Bronx, but in Harlem, it's going to be so hard. So just pray for us, and if you can support us as best you can donate on our website as well, on mygen.church /giving. Any support, any contribution you can give, that would be greatly appreciated to our ministry and to be able to do church the right way.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you so much. And I look forward to the journey. Would love to have you back if you want to talk about an upcoming series.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know you're preparing for Genesis at this point.
Yeah. Book of Genesis. I'm really trying to get to Exodus, but I need to
Mhm.
do Genesis to get to Exodus. But we're looking forward to it. This year. We're hopefully going to cover Genesis, Exodus, and the minor prophets this year. That's what our goal
Awesome.
is, with some
Awesome.
other goodies coming up.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Blessings to you and the fam, and I look forward to the journey. Thank you so much again for joining us on the What a Word podcast.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
No problem, man.
I felt like we need to kind of take a step back and begin to start to teach the church about what church is. If we have the chance to build up a church, let's build church the right way. And that's literally our slogan, building church the right way. What does church look like? Building church the right way. And so in that, our sermons are a lot different. Our study is a lot different. It's a lot more meaningful. It doesn't necessarily speak to the, we're going to just talk about sex and relationships. Not necessarily saying that sex and relationship isn't a good topic, but, I feel like the Bible speaks and teaches more than what I feel is the things that we feel attract youth and young adults.